Well, a very warm good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Namibia. Well, should I say a cold Tuesday evening? I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of Namibian Sun newspaper. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Evening Review Show. Tonight we're joined in studio by the Minister of Information and Communications Technology, Dr. Peya Mushelenga. Welcome, sir, and good evening.
Good evening, and thank you.
It's good to have you here. Honorable Minister, of course, the past few days, the civil servants elections and the subsequent decisions to have a strike, of course, prompted by their wage demands, has been making headlines over the country. Can you just take us through the government's reaction as far as this is concerned, and also what is being done to ensure that a mutually beneficial solution is found to this impasse?
Thank you very much. As you know, government had a negotiating team that comprises of executive directors that was negotiating with the trade unions. The negotiations started last year. Initially, the union were demanding increment that would amount to over 3 billion, which was later revised and came to about 1.5 billion. Of that amount, about 1.2 billion was to go to 5% increment. And 334.9 million was then to go to benefits. Now, given the state of the economy, the government coffers are unable to sustain an additional 1.2 billion to the current budget, which already reflects a deficit. And you know, currently public debt stands at about 75% of the GDP. So the government then offered to rather increase the benefits, classified as follows. 14.5%, that was an increment that goes to housing allowance for civil servants who don't have mortgage bonds. And then you have 7% increment to civil servants that have home ownership schemes, those that have mortgage bonds. Then again, you have 12% for the housing allowance of civil servants in the management category, because the ones of 14.5 are those that are not in the management category. And then you have now again another 12% that goes to, 12% is what goes to those in management. Then you have now another 14% that goes to transport allowance for civil servants that are not in the management category. The union and the negotiating team could not agree on that. And the union, therefore, declared a dispute. They went to the labor commissioner, who appointed a conciliator to see if the party could reach an agreement. And when it was found that the parties could not agree, then the unions opted for a strike and to seek mandate from the workers if they should strike. They went and vote, the results of which we are all aware.
Yeah.
A yes vote. That means that workers will go on strike. Before going on strike, the conciliator will call the two parties, that is the government negotiating team and the unions. And I believe as we are talking, they should be meeting because they are scheduled to meet today. And you know, these meetings take from the day up to the evening.
Yeah.
Or maybe they are already out. To see if the parties are able to resolve before going for a strike.
Yeah.
That is the process that is generally followed.
Yeah.
Yes. For the government, you would recall that I was on Namibia Broadcasting Corporation. You know, it is always good to be open and transparent and tell the people in a plain language rather than making promises that you may not fulfill.
Yeah.
So we have said it then, and we are saying that it is not that government does not want to increase the salaries of civil servants, but that government is not in a position to do that without facing worse economic consequences for the country.
Yeah.
But I would want to take you back during the time when government used to have surpluses. Government had always agreed to increment. Government even agreed to the regrading of the grades of the civil service. When it was recommended, it had an option of not agreeing.
Yeah.
And in this regrading, some civil servant salaries were actually doubled during that time. They were actually doubled.
Yeah.
So that tells you that there have always been goodwill to the government. Of course, I have heard people commenting that government, as if government has not been doing anything for the past 30 years. How many times did we have salary increment? How many times did we have some relief in terms of tax, even increasing the threshold to where it stands now?
Yeah.
So all these were good will from the side of the government to ensure that our civil servants are in a position to keep up with inflation. But as of now, truth be told as it is, starting in the year 2020 when we had impact of COVID, and not only in Namibia, but also in some other countries. This is a global trend. Economies went down all over the world, in various countries. There was no revenue. For example, if you look to the tourism industry, it almost half of it, or even more than that, completely shut down.
Yeah.
We have people who have lost employment because of that, because people could not travel to come to Namibia. So accommodation outlets have been suffering. And again, in as much as these accommodation outlets have not been receiving revenue, they were also not able to pay revenue to the government because they were not making profits.
Yeah.
So we are talking about reduced tax revenue for the government. Now the expenditure of the government was already high because it was based on the income by then.
Yeah.
But following COVID, you have high expenditure and low income because we did not want to say, for example, let us reduce the salary of people as it happened in the private sector. Because what the private sector did is, during the times before COVID, if my income was 10 million and I was spending 2 million on stuff, now that my income has been reduced to 6 million, I'll slash my spending on the stuff to 1 million, for example.
Yeah.
Now, government has not done that. We did not cut salaries, we did not cut benefits of all government employees.
Yeah.
The wage bill still remained the same, 58%. But the revenue went down because of the factors that I told you, because of COVID. Many economic activities were closed and government was not generating any revenue.
Yeah.
But we guaranteed payments of our civil servants because we know that by reducing it, it further exacerbates the economic conditions in which they find themselves.
Yeah. So would you say there's an unfair hesitancy, especially from the side of the civil servants, to meet government halfway in the economic conditions that you've explained now?
Well, it is for the public to make its informed opinion, given the state of the economy and given the demands that are being demanded. Because what I can tell you, if government is to agree to that 1.5 billion increment, you will end up with some months when government will not be able to pay the civil servants. And this is not just something that we are saying. It has happened in other countries. It happened in Sri Lanka. Now, what does that mean? It means you receive a salary at the end of this month, then salary increment, you are able to meet your inflation and everything. Then at the end of next month, you have no salary. You have a house that is mortgaged. You have a car that you are paying for, school fees that you need to pay, tuition for your children. You have to buy food. You have to pay municipality bills, telephones, and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, without receiving your salary, you cannot do that. So you do not want to end up in a situation where you have a bankrupt government and everything collapse, because it is not only for civil servants, for those that depend on government tenders, even for the Namibian son, which is bought by the government. You know, we buy newspapers from you. We will not be able to do these things. You will also be affected here.
Yeah.
Everyone, literally, most of the people depends on government, even those that are not employed directly by the government. Now imagine a month where government is not able to pay salaries, is not able to honor its bills to creditors, is not able to pay old age pensions, subvention to war veterans, allowances for orphans and vulnerable children. What would be of this country?
Yeah.
Unable to buy further medicine. We are still in COVID. COVID is not gone. Unable to buy further medication for all other patients, malaria and so forth. Yeah, all these things we must think about as a country without being emotional about the issue, but being realistic about the state of the economy in which we are, not only in Namibia, but in the world. Mind you, apart from COVID, We have war in Ukraine. Sanctions imposed against Russia. This is again coming to hit us as we import from these countries, as we import from Russia, as we import from the EU.
Yeah. Well, Minister, we'll go for a short break and we'll come back to continue this conversation during the second half of the show. To our viewers, we'll head for a short break and be back after this. Well, let me welcome back our viewers from the short break. Honourable Minister, let's continue this conversation. There is a general consensus that perhaps it's true that the government is facing tough economic headwinds. There's also a general feeling that over the years, especially the last 6-7 years, where civil servants have not enjoyed a salary increment, politicians, on the other hand, have gotten their share of an increment. And that's the talk that has been going around in the public, especially during the past days of around the strike of the civil servants. What is your take on that?
Well,
is this some sort of animal farm syndrome where some are more equal than others?
let us face the facts as they are. Last time that political office bearers had an increment was 2015. Civil servants, I think it was in their 2016-2017 financial year. And that increment that office bearers had, I want to take you back. When we did regrading of civil servants, the regrading of civil servants was made on the recommendation. But you must know that political office bearers don't get increment at the same time as civil servants because they have what you call the political office bearers commission, which recommend their salaries. When civil servants got their increment, as I told you, some even got double. Politicians had nothing. When I was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was earning a salary below a Deputy Permanent Secretary by then. I want to bring that to the attention of everyone. Facts should speak for themselves. Then they got their increment in phases 2014 and 2015. That was now the adjustment by the Political Office Bearer Commission. And actually, not all of these recommendations were implemented. So that's the last time that political office bearer had an increment, 2015. Those who had any adjustment are those that were promoted either from Member of Parliament to Deputy Minister, from Deputy Minister to Minister. But anyone who had not been promoted since 2015, they remain getting the same amount of remuneration they were getting. So civil servants were the last to receive increment and not political office bearers.
What, as the information minister, what would you say, what is driving this wedge between politicians and the public at large? Because there seems to be mistrust between the two.
First is lack of information. That's why I say, for me, I would rather tell you what is on the table and you make your informed opinion and judgment. Two, there are people that are propagating information that are also not true. You can't politicize issues like this. These are bread and butter issues. government is not inconsiderate not to be concerned about the plight of the civil servants.
But some people would also say then that they read every day and see how resources are, whether it's now misplaced or mismanaged, and some of them are using that argument to say, but we are here where we are because of our own doings and not because of other factors.
First, I would want to make it clear. It is not necessarily, when you talk of management, government has political office bearer, it has civil servants.
Yeah.
Now, if you go and see who are the people that are entrusted, particularly when I was Minister of Urban and Rural Development, I had a bad view of what was going on in the government. It was some of the civil servants that were doing the thing. The issue is just like when you're talking about corruption.
Yeah.
I heard one academic saying it's because of corruption and so on.
Well, is that not the case? What do you say to that?
Look at the way we are ranked. It is not to say there are no corrupt activities taking place.
Yeah.
The question is, what do you do when you see these corrupt activities? Has government folded its arms whenever a corrupt activity is reported? No. When a corrupt activity is reported, appropriate institutions do take action. The police, the Anti-Corruption Commission, and the Prosecutor General.
Yeah.
I want someone to tell me any single case of corruption that was reported and government folded its arm.
Yeah.
So you can't say it's because of corruption, as if you are implying it is cabinet that is corrupt or it is parliament that is corrupt. Yeah? It is Namibians that are corrupt.
Yeah. So what do you make
Some even not civil servants. When I was a Minister of Urban and Rural Development,
Yeah.
how many people that I have seen going to local authorities trying to do things that you can clearly see were of corrupt nature? Decisions taken transparently, then all of a sudden they are to be changed and so forth.
Yeah. So this rhetoric of government.
So if you are talking of corrupt, yes, there are people there in the public that are corrupt who want to corrupt public officials.
Yeah.
Of course, unfortunately, some of the public officials fall for this corruption. But as soon as they are reported, or if government spots them, it does take action.
Yeah. Have you gotten any advances of people wanting to corrupt you?
I have not had people that have come to me saying, do this and that. But from what I have seen from those that were working under me, clearly there were advances of corruption.
Yeah.
And of course, people will tell you this cannot happen.
Yeah. Why do you think people don't believe government's anti-corruption rhetoric?
Well, as I said, it is again a question of information. For example, if I go and report to the anti-corruption to say, how Fico is corrupt, first, I should provide the information that he is corrupt. Secondly, an investigation should be launched. Now, recently I wrote a thesis about investigator-prosecutor collaboration in terms of investigations. In most cases, investigations do not produce results because either you have a lack of cooperation from those that are able to provide evidence. Some will hide behind the thing to say, no, I'm not too sure whether my identity will be known and so forth. Now, if there is an activity of corruption there, but there is no evidence, you go to court, a person goes scot-free, not because he or she is not corrupt, but because there's no evidence. Now, this information people do not have. They believe if they know you are corrupt, you should definitely be arrested. This is a country of a rule of law. There are procedures and rules that are followed for people to be convicted.
Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier on that the government negotiating team and the unions are currently sitting to decide the way forward.
Currently sitting, or maybe they have
Maybe
already
they're done.
set, or maybe they have agenda. Yes.
Yeah. Is this giving government sleepless nights as to the way forward?
No, yes, the government will have sleepless nights for the following. And I don't think it is only government that should have sleepless night. Any person who is realistic, including you, should have sleepless nights. Let me give you this scenario. Suppose workers goes on strike. You must know that the principle of no work, no pay applies. You don't know how many days the strike will take. At the end of the month, you have a salary cut or you don't have a salary if you strike for a month. You are unable to pay again your bills. You are again unable to pay for the education of your children. Then coming to teachers, if the teachers strike, what would happen to the children now? Let us think as parents, as Namibians. Would you not have a sleepless night to imagine of children going to fail, going to repeat, having a year that has gone to a waste? And a year is quite a long period. Losing an academic year is not a joke. Have you failed in your life?
No.
I have failed 1989, not because I did not know, it's because I was busy with the process of independence and I did not read. So losing a year is not a joke. So now to have our children losing a year, it will give me sleepless nights because I know what it means. I know what it means for people that do not get paid when they are unable to buy groceries, which means those shops are also not making any benefits. And employees in those shops would either also face retrenchment and so forth. You know, these economic activities, they go like this spiral affecting one another. Don't think if the strike comes, it will only affect the civil servants. It will affect. And some of the people that are encouraging people to do these things, they have other means to survive. I can assure you. Some have businesses that they would depend on. They know that for the next 6 or 8 months, I am sorted out. So we must think soberly about what are the consequences already in a state of an economy in which we are. If things goes well, look at other countries. You want people to be forced, economy just falling like that, people to be forced to go out of the country, how many will be able to find employment out?
Just lastly, Honorable Minister, before we wrap up.
And where will they find employment if everywhere there is similar economic conditions?
That's my last question before we wrap up. Should the teams, the two parties fail to reach consensus and the strike goes ahead, just briefly from your side, just under less than 30 seconds, what cushioning measures does government have in place to cushion the public system?
Well, first I would want to emphasize that if we go on strike, we would have essential services running. So government would be able to do what it can do with its limitations to keep the services that could keep the system at a minimum running, but I cannot guarantee you that things will be the same. It's all I can tell you, that things will not be the same, and the consequences will be something that all of us are going to regret, because resuscitating the economy after this will not be easy. I have seen strikes. Tsumeb is another example. How many years did it take for Tsumeb as a town to recover from that? And even those that were working there. Yes.
Well, Minister, thank you very much for your time tonight.
It's my pleasure.
It's a pleasure being here. To our viewers, thank you for staying tuned in with us. Have a pleasant evening. See you again tomorrow. Same time, same place.